Ani Jayek, Mano Robin, I hope you're having a wonderful day and welcome back to our Braiding Sweetgrass group. We are in the 7th episode. So I did a whole episode last week that was episode 7, and I uploaded the video to YouTube. Everything was great, and somehow it didn't go through. So I apologize. I have no idea what happened. I'm still learning. It's a process. So in what would have been episode 7, the real episode 7, we went over chapters Witch Hazel and A Mother's Work. It was pretty deep and emotional. It was a really good thing to go over. So I'm really sad that I lost that content. But I don't feel the need to revisit it again because y'all should have your books anyway. So make sure you read Witch Hazel and A Mother's Work, take notes, and then drop them in the comments and let's just discuss. Let's go with it. Okay, so now we're going to get started, but before we get started, if you need to pause the video and smudge yourself, get a glass of water or tea or beverage of your choice, and just make sure you're relaxed, you're in a good state, you have maybe some nice music playing, and so that you're in the moment, you're focused, you're not thinking about other things, the door is closed, maybe you have your privacy note that you put out there, your do not disturb sign, and then let's carry on. Okay, so we're gonna start with the Constellation of Water Lilies, and just a heads up, I'm probably going to get emotional. There are so many correlations between Robin Wall Kimmerer experience with children leaving the nest and myself. For example, it starts out, before I knew it, and long before the pond was ready for swimming, they were gone. My daughter Lyndon chose to leave the little pond and put her feet in the ocean at a redwood college far from home. I went to visit her that first semester, and we spent a lazy Sunday afternoon admiring the rocks of the Agate Beach at Patrick's Point. My daughter, so I grew up in Utah. My daughter grew up in Utah. Our son grew up in Utah until he was the age of 5. Then we moved to Tennessee. When my daughter graduated from high school here, she was accepted to Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania, which it's about a 9-hour drive from our home in Tennessee, and it was a change. It was the best decision she ever made, and we were 100% behind her. And she left. She flew the coop. We thought that she would at least come home for the summers. She never did. She was off on her own and being glorious. And now she's in grad school going for her doctorate, and now she's in oh my goodness, she is in Massachusetts. I had a total brain block right there. Now she's a little bit farther away. She's in Massachusetts, which that's now a 14-hour drive, so we just fly. But it's hard. Overnight, your little duckling, your little fledgling has grown up, and they don't need you as much anymore. It's not that they don't need you as much anymore. I think it just shifts. Their needs shift, your needs as a parent shift, but at the same time, it is marvelous to see them off on their own, making their dreams happen. I think that's the important part. My son is now, he's 13, he'll be 14 this summer. I don't know what he is gonna do. I think he's of course gonna be just amazing in whatever he chooses. He goes back and forth. Of course he's gonna be a famous gamer, but now he's also looking into forestry and that sort of thing. So it's amazing to see them grow up, isn't it? Go ahead and put your discussion in the comments, and I want to see if other mothers are experiencing the same thing, or if you're not a mother, you're an auntie to children, whether it's a direct relation or not. We're aunties to many children. Drop your experiences and your ideas in the comments and let's discuss. So I'm going to go on reading. We are in the Constellation of Water Lilies. This is on page 9899. Walking the shore, I spotted a smooth green pebble threaded with carnelian, just like one I'd passed by a few steps earlier. I walked back, searching the strand, until I found it again. I reunited the two pebbles, letting them lie together, shining wet in the sun until the tide came back and pulled them apart, rolling their edges smoother and their bodies smaller. The whole beach was like that for me, a gallery of beautiful pebbles divided from each other and from the shore. Lyndon's way on the beach was different. She too was rearranging, but her method was to place gray with black basalt and pink beside a spruce green oval. Her eye was finding new pairings. Mine was searching out the old. I had known it would happen from the first time I held her. From that moment on, all her growing would be away from me. It is the fundamental unfairness of parenthood that if we do our jobs well, the deepest bond we are given will walk out the door with a wave over the shoulder. We get good training along the way. We learn to say, "Have a great time, sweetie," while we are longing to pull them back to safety. And against all the evolutionary imperatives of protecting our gene pool, we give them car keys and freedom. It's our job, and I wanted to be a good mother. I was happy for her, of course, poised at the beginning of a new adventure, but I was sad for myself, enduring the agony of missing her. My friends who had already weathered this passage counseled me to remember the parts of having a house full of children that I wouldn't miss a bit. I would be glad to retire from the worried nights when the roads are snowy, waiting for the sound of tires in the driveway exactly 1 minute before curfew, the half-done chores, and the mysteriously emptying refrigerator. There were days when I'd get up in the morning and the animals had beaten me to the kitchen. The calico cat yelled from her perch, "Feed me!" The long hair stood by his bowl silently with an accusing stare. The dog threw herself against my legs with happiness and looked expectant. "Feed me." And I did. I dropped handfuls of oatmeal and cranberries into one pot and stirred hot chocolate in another. The girls came downstairs sleepy-eyed and needing that homework paper from last night. "Feed me," they said, and I did. I tipped the scraps into the compost bucket so when the next summer's tomato seedlings say "feed me," I can. And when I kiss the girls goodbye at the door, the horses whicker at the fence for their bucket of grain, and the chickadees call from their empty seed tray, "Feed me, 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 feed me, me, me." The fern on the windowsill droops its fronds in silent requests. When I put the key in the ignition of the car, it starts to ping, "Fill me," which I do. I listen to public radio all the way to school, and thank goodness it's not Pledge Week. I remember my babies at the breast, the first feeding, the long, deep suck that drew up from my innermost well, which was filled and filled again by the look that passed between us, the I can never say this word, the reciprocity of mother and child. I suppose I should welcome the freedom from all that feeding and worrying, but I'll miss it. Maybe not the laundry, but the immediacy of those looks. The presence of our reciprocal love is hard to say goodbye to. I understood that part of my sadness at Lyndon's departure was because I did not know who I would be when I was no longer known as Lyndon's mother. But I had a bit of reprieve from that crisis, as I am also justly famous for being Larkin's mother. But this too would pass. Before my younger daughter, Larkin, left, she and I had a last campfire up at the pond and watched the stars come out. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this." The next morning she had the car all packed with dorm furnishings and school supplies. The quilt that I made for her before she was born showed through one of the big plastic tubs of essentials. When everything she needed was stuffed in the back, then she helped me load mine on the roof. Oh, this brings back so many memories. I'm a little emotional. Yeah, this is deep. This hits home for me in a big way. Now I want to keep reading because this next part, I swear, like there's so many correlations in this book. And so I know if Robin is speaking to me on this level, and I feel like she's telling my story, I know that she's telling your story too. And I would love to hear it. So please feel free to drop your experiences in the comments. I really want to hear your story. I saw girls dismiss their parents with a waggle of fingers, but Larkin walked me out to the dorm parking lot, where the herds of minivans were still disgorging their cargoes. Under the gaze of deliberately cheerful dads and strained-looking moms, we hugged again and shed some smiley tears that we both thought had already been used up. As I opened the car door, she started to walk away and called out loudly, "Mom, if you break down in uncontrollable sobs on the highway, please pull over." The entire parking lot erupted in laughter, and then we were all released. I swear almost this exact same thing happened with my daughter. We went to Lake Erie and we said goodbye to the lake and then drove her back to her dorm, and I was so afraid to leave, and I even stayed in Erie that last night. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay one more night in the hotel in case she needs something. Of course she didn't at all, but she knew it was gonna be hard for me, and she was almost seemed like more worried for me than I was worried for her. Okay, I want to move on to this next part. We're on page 102. I don't want to read it all to you because I really want you to buy the book and read it. But to just bring you up to this, she's dropped her last daughter off at college. She's left. She has her red kayak and she's off on a pond. And the grief, I don't know if grief is the right word. The emotions that this transition is creating finally bubble to the surface, and she has a release. They're alone on the water. I don't know how long I floated, but my little red boat drifted the length of the lake. Rustling whispers round my hull drew me from reverie, and the first thing I saw upon opening my eyes were polished green leaves of water lilies and spatterdocks smiling up at me again, rooted in darkness and floating in the light. I found myself surrounded by hearts on the water, luminous green hearts. The lilies seemed to pulse with light, green hearts beating with my own. There were young heart leaves below the water on their way up, and old leaves on the surface, some with edges tattered by a summer of wind and waves, and no doubt kayak paddles. The new leaves take up oxygen into the tightly packed air spaces of their young, developing tissues, whose density creates a pressure gradient. The older leaves, with looser air spaces created by tatters and tears that open the leaf, create a low pressure region where oxygen can be released into the atmosphere. This gradient exerts a pull on the air taken in by the young leaf. Since they are connected by air-filled capillary network, the oxygen moves by mass flow from the young leaves to the old, passing through and oxygenating the rhizome in the process. The young and the old are linked in one long breath, an inhalation that calls for reciprocal exhalation, nourishing the common root from which they both arose. New leaf to old, old to new, mother to daughter, mutually endures. I'm consoled by the lesson of lilies. Okay, when I first read this, I completely fell apart. Completely fell apart. Because I not only thought about my daughter, I thought about my mother and my mother's mother and my future granddaughters. And I felt very overwhelmed. So again, I would like to know your feelings on this chapter. Now I'm still reading on 103, and I feel like this is a very important paragraph. The earth, that first among good mothers, gives us the gift that we cannot provide ourselves. I hadn't realized that I had come to the lake and said, "Feed me." But my empty heart was fed. I had a good mother. She gives what we need without being asked. I wonder if she gets tired, old Mother Earth, or if she too is fed by the giving. "Thanks," I whispered, "for all of this." This is something I think we all need reminding of. When we think of mothers, we often just think of, our physical mothers, the mother that gave birth to us. But we often don't think enough of the mother that sustains us, all of us, daily and nightly, and that's Mother Earth. What do we do to give back? To not only give back, but to show gratitude, whether it's a prayer or tending into a garden or just speaking it out loud like Robin did in this paragraph. Thank you for all of this. So often, too often, we overlook the mother that sustains all of us, including our mother. And I know that all of us have mom issues and dad issues. And I know that at the end of the day, I just want to be a better parent than my parents were. And then I hope that my children are better parents than I was. Because Lord knows I've made plenty of mistakes. And we can't go back. Hindsight is 20/20, right? But our Earth Mother, our Mother Earth, is the one we won't have those issues with. You know what I'm trying to say? No matter what, Mother Earth is there for us and sustains us, gives us food and water and nourishment, is there for us when we're grieving, or when we're happy and joyful. So thinking of it that way makes me feel like I need to be more grateful and show it. But it also gives me great comfort in knowing that that support system is always there, no matter what. Okay, now we're wrapping up the Constellation of Water Lilies, and I want to end that with Robin's last paragraph in this chapter. "We are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Their life is in their movement, the inhale and the exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass along the gift and to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back." Okay, now we're starting on page 105, the allegiance to gratitude. And just a foremention that this goes into the Pledge of Allegiance and those choosing to sit or stand. Indigenous people, I know, me personally, I'm very conflicted about the Pledge of Allegiance, and I didn't know of any other people outside of the Indigenous community that had a problem with it until like the BLM movement started and Kaepernick started kneeling during the national anthem, that other people felt the same way I did. It was something I never had the courage to sit out for, though. I would fake it, and I lied and pledged allegiance to a flag that I knew didn't care about me. I mean, I'm the merciless Indian savage in the Constitution. That has never changed. So pledging allegiance to that was always very conflicting for me. Um, so just if you are of a different belief, that is fine. You don't have to share my belief. This is about having a conversation about how other people might feel about it. So just so that you're forewarned, this isn't a debate. This isn't who's right or who's wrong. This is a discussion about other people's experiences that may differ from your own. So basically in this chapter, it starts out as Robin gets a call that one of her daughters is choosing to stay seated during the Pledge of Allegiance. And the teacher's like, whatever, she can do what she wants, but it started a trend. Other students are now staying seated. It's not disruptive, but she just wanted parents to be aware that this was going on. So that's how the chapter starts out. And Robin, she kind of had the same, like, we did the same thing. We didn't really, it was something we had to recite. We may not agree with it, but we did it because that's what the whole class did. And it was a ritual. We didn't really know what the words meant anyway until we were older. And so Robin goes on, she's saying, hand over heart, we recited the Pledge of Allegiance. The pledge was a puzzlement to me, as I'm sure it is to most students. I had no earthly idea what a republic even was, and was not too sure about God either. And you didn't have to be an 8-year-old Indian to know that liberty and justice for all was a questionable premise. From where I stand today, though the idea of asking school children to pledge loyalty to a political system seems exceedingly curious, especially since we know full well that the practice of recitation will largely be abandoned in adulthood, when the age of reason has presumably been attained. Apparently, my daughter had reached that age, and I was not about to interfere. Mom, I'm not going to stand there and lie, she explained. And it's not exactly liberty if they force you to say it, is it? She is a very bright child. She knew different morning rituals, her grandfather's pouring of coffee on the ground and the one I carried out on the hill above our house. And that was enough for me. The sunrise ceremony is our Potawatomi way of sending gratitude into the world, to recognize all that we are given and to offer our choicest thanks in return. Many Native people across the world, despite myriad cultural differences, have this in common. We are rooted in cultures of gratitude. Our old farm is within the ancestral homelands of the Onondaga Nation, and their reserve lies a few ridges to the west of my hilltop. There, just like on my side of the ridge, school buses discharge a herd of kids who run even after the bus monitors bark, walk. But Onondaga, the flag flying outside the entrance is purple and white, depicting the Hiawatha Wampum Belt, the symbol of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. With bright backpacks too big for their little shoulders, the kids stream in through the doors, painted their traditional Haudenosaunee purple, with the words Naya Wenha Ska Nun, a greeting of health and peace. Black-haired children run circles around the atrium, through sun shafts, over clan symbols etched on the slate floor. Here the school week begins and ends, not with the Pledge of Allegiance, but with the Thanksgiving address. A river of words as old as the people themselves, known more accurately in the Onondaga language as the words that come before all else. This ancient order of protocol sets gratitude as the highest priority. The gratitude is directed straight to the ones who share their gifts with the world. Now, this is amazing. I wish, instead of pledging allegiance to a piece of fabric, to a piece of cloth, wouldn't it be great if we could have a Thanksgiving sort of gratitude instead, like our sunrise ceremony? For those that aren't indigenous or don't know the sunrise ceremony, I think you could probably Google it. But basically, it's you meet the sunrise, you can put your sema or your tobacco down, and you're just grateful for the sunrise. And you greet it like an old friend. Hello, friend. Um, then pledge. Wouldn't that mean so much more? At least I think that it would, rather than I pledge allegiance to this piece of fabric and a whole bunch of words I don't know the vocabulary of yet, as a young child. And it brings me back to, I think most First Nations and Native Americans in North America, I believe in South America as well, we don't have a word for please, because it's given that we already have that gratitude. And so it would be a silly word because we already have that respect tied to everything that we do, everything we say, everything we think. The gratitude is already there. The need and the expectations that we help one another, it's just a given. There's no please or there's no word needed. However, there's many words, or we all have a word for thank you, for gratitude. Chi miigwech is thank you very much. Miigwech is thanks. And we have 5 different ways to say I love you, but no word for please. And I think that's an important lesson too, because in everything you do, every step you take, every breath you take, every thought you have, every action, the respect and the need to help others is already there. But the gratitude needs words as well as actions to show. And I feel like that's very important. And I would much rather teach my children gratitude and respect rather than reciting words that they don't understand yet to a piece of cloth that they don't understand. That's my viewpoint on it. But of course, drop your comments in the comment section and let's have a discussion. So now I just want to read a little bit more on that page 107 about her visit to the Onondaga school, which I bet was wonderful. Their little faces are screwed up with concentration, and they glance at their teacher for prompts when they stumble on the words. In their own language, they say the words they've heard nearly every day of their lives. Now, they're saying this in their language, not in English, but the English translation is, "Today we have gathered, and when we look upon the faces around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now let us bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one." Brilliant. I don't think you need anything more than that to get started for the day. But it continues. "We are thankful to our mother, the earth, for she gives us everything that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about upon her. It gives us joy that she still continues to care for us, just as she has from the beginning of time. To our mother, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect. Now our minds are one." Robin goes on to say, "The pledge has no place here. Onondaga is a sovereign territory, surrounded on every side by the republic for which it stands, but outside the jurisdiction of the United States. Starting the day with the Thanksgiving address is a statement of identity and an exercise of sovereignty, both political and cultural, and so much more. The address is sometimes mistakenly viewed as a prayer, But the children's heads are not bowed. The elders at Onondaga teach otherwise, that the address is far more than a pledge, a prayer, or a poem alone. Two little girls step forward with arms linked and take up the words again. We give thanks to all of the waters of the world for quenching our thirst, for providing strength and nurturing life for all beings. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans, snow and ice. We are grateful that the waters are still here and meeting their responsibility to the rest of creation. Can we agree that water is important to our lives and bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to the water? Now our minds are one. I am told that the Thanksgiving address is at heart an invocation of gratitude, but it is also a material scientific inventory of the natural world. Another name for this oration is greetings and thanks to the natural world. As it goes forward, each element of the ecosystem is named in its turn, along with its function. It is a lesson in native science. We turn our thoughts to all of the fish life in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that they continue to do their duties, and we send to the fish our greetings and our thanks. Now our minds are one. Now we turn towards the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eye can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come. Now our minds are one. When we look about us, we see that the berries are still here, providing us with delicious foods. The leader of the berries is the strawberry, the first to ripen in the spring. Can we agree that we are grateful that the berries are with us in the world and send our thanksgiving, love, and respect to the berries? Now our minds are one. I wonder if there are kids here who, like my daughter, rebel, who refuse to stand and say thank you to the earth. It seems hard to argue with gratitude for berries. With one mind, we honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden, especially the three sisters who feed the people with such abundance. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, and fruit have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them as well. We gather together in our minds all the plants' foods and send them a greeting and thanks. Now our minds are one. The kids take note of each addition and nod in agreement, especially for food. A little boy in a Red Hawks lacrosse shirt steps forward to speak. Now we turn to the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are so happy that they are still among us, those special few who remember how to use the plants for healing. With one mind, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect to the medicines and the keepers of the medicines. Now our minds are one. Standing around us, we see all the trees. The earth has many families of trees who each have their own instructions and uses. Some provide shelter and shade, others fruit and beauty and many useful gifts. The maple is the leader of the trees, to recognize its gifts of sugar when the people need it most. Many peoples of the world recognize a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. Now our minds are one. We gather our minds together to send our greetings and thanks to all the beautiful animal life of the world who walk about with us. They have many things to teach us as people. We are grateful that they continue to share their lives with us and hope that it will always be so. Let us put our minds together as one and send our thanks to the animals. Now our minds are one. Imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority. Frida Jacques works at the Onondaga National School. She is a clan mother, the school community liaison, and a generous teacher. She explains to me that the Thanksgiving address embodies the Onondaga relationship with the world. Each part of creation is thanked in turn for fulfilling its creator-given duty to the others. It reminds you every day that you have enough, she says. More than enough. Everything needed to sustain life is already here. When we do this every day, it leads us to an outlook of contentment and respect for all of creation. You can't listen to the Thanksgiving address without feeling wealthy. And while expressing gratitude seems innocent enough, it is a revolutionary idea. In a consumer society, contentment is a radical proposition. Recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness. But the economy needs emptiness. The Thanksgiving address reminds you that you already have everything you need. Gratitude doesn't send you out shopping to find satisfaction. It comes as a gift rather than a commodity, subverting the foundation of the whole economy. That's good medicine for land and people alike. This is a huge lesson right here. Going on, we put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them the gift of beautiful songs. Each morning they greet the day and with their songs remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader and to watch over the world. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. The oratory is more than an economic model. It's a civics lesson too. Frida emphasizes that hearing the Thanksgiving address every day lifts up models of leadership for the young people. Let me see if I can turn this page here. The strawberry as a leader of the berries, the eagle as a leader of the birds. It reminds them that much is expected of them eventually. It says this is what it means to be a good leader, to have vision and to be generous, to sacrifice on behalf of the people. Like the maple, leaders are the first to offer their gifts. It reminds the whole community that leadership is rooted not in power and authority, but in service and wisdom. Wow, that's something the whole world needs right now in their leaders. We are all thankful for the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind we send our greeting and thanks to the four winds. Now our minds are one. As Frida says, the Thanksgiving address is a reminder we cannot hear too often, that we human beings are not in charge of the world, but are subject to the same forces as all of the rest of life. Now here Robin is going to touch on the pledge again and the internal conflict she kind of has. For me, the cumulative impact of the Pledge of Allegiance from my time as a schoolgirl to my adulthood was a cultivation of cynicism and a sense of the nation's hypocrisy, not the pride it was meant to instill. As I grew to understand the gifts of the earth, I couldn't understand how love of country could omit recognition of the actual country itself. The only promise it requires is to a flag. What of the promises to each other and to the land? What would it be like to be raised on gratitude? To speak to the natural world as a member of the democracy of species, to raise a pledge of interdependence. No decorations of political loyalty are required, just a response to a repeated question. Can we agree to be grateful for all that is given? In the Thanksgiving address, I hear respect towards all our non-human relatives, not one political entity, but to all of life. What happens to nationalism, to political boundaries, when allegiance lies with winds and waters that know no boundaries, that cannot be bought or sold? The words are simple, but in the art of their joining, they become a statement of sovereignty, a political structure, a bill of responsibilities, an educational model, a family tree, and a scientific inventory of ecosystem services. It is a powerful political document, a social contract, a way of being, all in one piece. But first and foremost, it is the credo for a culture of gratitude. Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. An integral part of humans' education is to know those duties and how to perform them. The Thanksgiving address reminds us that duties and gifts are two sides of the same coin. Eagles were given the gift of farsight, so it is their duty to watch over us. Rain fulfills its duty as it falls, because it was given the gift of sustaining life. What is the duty of humans? If gifts and responsibilities are one, then asking what is our responsibility is the same as asking what is our gift. It is said that only humans have the capacity for gratitude. This is among our gifts. It's such a simple thing, but we all know the power of gratitude to incite a cycle of reciprocity. If my girls run out the door with lunch in hand without a thanks, mama, I confess I get to feeling a tad miserly with my time and energy. But when I get a hug of appreciation, I want to stay up late to bake cookies for tomorrow's lunch bag. We know that appreciation begets abundance. Why should it not be so for Mother Earth, who packs us a lunch every single day? Now, I feel like it's important for me to read this full last page because it gives gratitude and recognition to the people this lesson comes from, and that's the Hadnuse. Robin says she's not Hadnuse, she's Potawatomi, but she did ask for permission to write about this prayer and how it has influenced her own thinking. Over and over, I was told that these words are a gift of the Hadnuse to the world. When I asked Onondaga Faithkeeper Oren Lyons about it, he gave his signature slightly bemused smile and said, "Of course you should write about it. It's supposed to be shared. Otherwise, how can it work? We've been waiting 500 years for people to listen. If they'd understood the Thanksgiving then, we wouldn't be in this mess. We've been waiting 500 years for people to listen. If they'd understood the Thanksgiving then, we wouldn't be in this mess. The Haudenosaunee have published the address widely, and it has now been translated into over 40 languages, and it is heard all around the world. Why not here in this land? I'm trying to imagine how it would be if schools transformed their mornings to include something like the Thanksgiving address. I mean no disrespect for the white-haired veterans in my town who stand with their hand on their heart as the flag goes by. This is important. Whose eyes fill with tears as they recite the pledge in raspy voices. I love my country too, and its hopes for freedom and justice. But the boundaries of what I honor are bigger than the Republic. Let us pledge reciprocity with the living world. The Thanksgiving address describes our mutual allegiance as human delegates to the democracy of species. If what we want for our people is patriotism, then let us inspire true love of country by invoking the land herself. If we want to raise good leaders, let us remind our children of the eagle and the maple. If we want to grow good citizens, then let us teach reciprocity. If we aspire to is justice for all, then let it be justice for all of creation. We have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things we have named, it is not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send us greeting and thanks in their own way. And now our minds are one. Every day with these words, the people give thanks to the land. In the silence that falls at the end of those words, I listen, longing for the day when we can hear the land give thanks for the people in return. Whew. That chapter almost left me more emotional than the chapter regarding removal, and when she talks about, her children leaving for college. I think it's the longing of spirit wanting to return to our truth, to a life more simple, a life without commodities or politicking or sides. Just simple gratitude for everything. And I think we're at a precipice where it's possible. So I want to leave this week on a little excerpt that goes into the next chapter, Epiphany and the Beans. And then I really hope we have a good discussion this week about the last 4 chapters. Remember, I didn't produce the last episode because of some technical failure on my part. So we're covering the last 4 chapters all the way up to next week we'll do Epiphany and the Beans. But I want to know your experiences, your feelings, your thoughts on the last 4 chapters, so drop them in the comments. Okay. Picking sweetgrass. Sweetgrass is harvested in midsummer, when the leaves are long and shiny. The blades are taken one by one and dried in the shade to preserve the color. A gift is always left in return. And with that, I want to thank all of you for following me on this journey, this crazy wild journey of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and wanting to learn more about Indigenous authors, Indigenous culture, and Indigenous growth along with all people. So Chi-miigwech, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Monday. Bama P.